How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Beis, Daf 62 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends, friends. We are sorry, I'm trying to hear what they're saying upstairs. They're asking about if the schnitzel should be warm tomorrow. I don't really care, I guess, because I don't eat schnitzel. Should the meat be warm? These are all things that aren't shaykh to me. I don't eat chickens and cows, or sheep and goats, things like that. Oh, corned beef. Hot. It's a big shiloh. Yeah, I just kind of eat whatever's around, I guess. Yeah. All right. So, we're doing some Kiddushin stuff. All right, we're going to start in Daf Samach Beis and Aleph at the Mishnah, about halfway through the Amud. Hamakadosh is Aisha v'Omar. So if a fellow is Makadosh a fella, and he says, "Don't." I thought she was a Kohenes. Turns out she's a Leviah. Dag nabbit. Leviah varei Kohenes. I thought she was a Leviah. Turns out she's a Kohenes. Aniya varei Ashir. I thought she was poor. Turns out she's rich. Ashir varei Aniya. I thought she was rich. Turns out she's poor. Look, it's good Kiddushin. Sorry, dude. I mean, she didn't do anything wrong. You didn't realize. You didn't do your research. Whatever. The Kiddushin itself. Right? We talked about the other day. Right? Dvarim shebalev inam dvarim. Right? Things in your heart don't count. So, right? He was Mekadesher. Finds out later, oh, oops, she didn't do anything wrong. She's Mekudeshes. So, Omer leisha, fella says to a fella, Hariyat Mekudeshes li la'achar she'ezgayer. You are Mekudeshes to me after I convert. Small detail. Or la'achar she'ezgayer, after you convert. La'achar she'eshtachver, after I'm in Eved Knaini, after I'm freed. Or la'achar she'eshtachveri, or after you are freed. La'achar she'yomuz bailech, says to a married woman, I am being Mekadesh you for after your husband dies. I get first dibs. Or after your sister dies, right? I guess maybe a fellow got divorced and now he wants to marry the sister of his ex-wife. Now you can't do that until if his ex-wife dies, he can marry her, but not as long as she's alive. So if he says to his ex-sister-in-law, I'm Mikudesh when your sister dies. Or, oh, I see that, you have a zika to your late husband's brother. So after he does chalitza, we'll be married. In any of these cases, that does not work, right? You can't make a mekadesh and a davar shelo bala olam, something that doesn't yet exist. We're going to talk about exactly more of the details in a few minutes. And similarly, if a fellow, right, Reuven says to Shimon that Ariel, what does Reuven say to Shimon? Reuven, wow, friends, my brother Ariel raps, is a big Talmud Chacham. He says, Reuven says to Shimon lots of stuff. Psh. What am I even doing? He should be given the shir. So Reuven says to Shimon, Shimon, when your wife gives birth to a idol, she's Mekudeshes to me. That doesn't work. Mamash comes out of the, is born, she's already, oh, alright, next. Oh, you missed it. I don't have anything to prompt you with. Ariel just gave a big chiddush. He said that Reuven says to Shimon lots of things.
That means that the two brothers are speaking to each other?
It means that, no, they're not brothers.
They're just friends? They're not married to Sarah and Rivka?
No, basically, Reuven wants to claim Shimon's unborn baby so that when she's born, she's already Mekudeshes to him.
And they don't have DNA tests yet?
I don't know.
Okay,
Tanan, awesome. We learned over there. Okay, in Tormin min talosh ala mechuber. So if you have stuff that's connected to the ground and you want to separate, so you can't separate truma on stuff that's still connected to the ground and say, all right, well I have stuff that's disconnected from the ground, I'll use that for truma on the stuff that's still connected to the ground. No, you don't separate truma from stuff that's still connected to the ground. And if you separate truma like that, it's irrelevant. But Rav Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan, what about in this case? Amar Peris Arugazo Tlushim Yiu Truma Peris Arugazo Mechubarim. Okay, so if he says that, so there's these fruits that are connected to the ground, so I want to separate truma from these fruits that are detached from the ground on behalf of the ones that are still attached to the ground. Let's keep on going. Peris Arugazo Mechubarim Yiu Truma Peris Arugazo Tlushim, or the fruits that are connected to the ground will be truma for the ones that are detached from the ground. Now here's the important point. Once they are separated from the ground. Once they are separated from the ground. So that's the important part, right? Is when they are disconnected, right? He's adding that point. And then they were disconnected. Mao. What's that? So Amarle Kol shebiyado lav kimchusur ma'asidam. That's the important point. The Rabbi Yochanan says, well, if we're talking about when they're disconnected, well, as long as he has the opportunity to be able to harvest them, well, then it's not considered a mechusur ma'asid. It's not considered like it's missing anything, and therefore it's considered like they're already detached, and therefore it's okay. So now, we have a kasha omer leisha. If a fellow says to a fellow, "Arab mikudeshesli lachashe esgayer," Yom Kudesh to me after I convert. Lachashet Tizgari after you convert. Lachashet Shtachre after I'm freed. Lachashet Tishtachri after you're freed. Lachashet Amos Bailech after your husband dies. Lachashet Amos Achosech after your sister dies. Lachashet Shiachlotz Yivamechin once your Yavam does Chalisa with you. Ain't Kudeshes. We said in any of these cases, Ain't Kudeshes. Now, Bishlam Kulula Abiyado. So I understand, okay, most of these things are out of her, out of their control, right? After I'm freed. I mean, it's not up to him to free. After you're freed, it's not up to, her to free herself. But there's one of them, however, Eleger have biyado. But a convert, it's up to him to convert. And therefore, if what Rabbi Yochanan is saying is correct, that if it's up to him, it's considered like it's done, so then why is that a problem? If an Ovi Kachovim says, when I convert, that should work because it's up to him to convert after all. So ger nami lav biyado. So actually the Gemara says no. Converting is actually also not in his control. To Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan, ger tzarich shlosha. Because a ger to convert, you need a bezdin of 3. My time how come mishpat ksidbe? Because it says mishpat. It's like a case. Kidin. It's like a court case. Miyemerdim is da'aka kulei. And who says that he's going to be able to find 3 people to serve as a court for him? Meaning there are external dependencies there. And actually, converting is also something that's considered outside of purely his own activity, and therefore that is why it does not work. Maskiflo, Rabbi Bar Mamel asks the kasha. Elamiata, I know saying pruta l'shivchaso. If a fellow gives a pruta to his shifcha knainis, the Amar, he says, "Harei mikudeshes li la'achar shachrarech." You are mikudeshes to me after I free you. Hachinami davu kiddushin. So would that be good kiddushin? After all, it's up to him to free her. So if a fellow is mikadesh shifcha knainis and says, "Harei mikudeshes li," after I free you, and it's up to him to free her. So then, are you saying that that's good kiddushin? So the Gemara says, well, no. The thing is, she's going from being a non-Jew, or at least not a full Jew, to being a Jew. That is a huge change, and therefore, that even though yes, it's in his ability to free her, that would not be considered like ke'enu mechusar ma'aseh. I mean, that's a pretty big transformation. That you can't be Makadesh her and just, a little detail when I free you. Freeing Shifcha Knainis to be a Jew now is a humongous transformation, and therefore that is why it doesn't work. That which Rabbi Shai says, Hanosim Pruta L'ishto, a fellow gives a Pruta to his wife. And he says to her, Haret Mikudeshes li la'achashe agar sheikh, Ein Mikudeshes. If a fellow says to his wife, here's a Pruta, Haret Mikudeshes li, after I divorce you. What an interesting setup. So they're married, he's basically divorcing her, but then upon the divorce kicking in, she's automatically now betrothed. So now, so So would you say that according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's good Kiddushin? Because after all, it's up to him to divorce her. So the Gemara says, well, yeah, maybe it is in his hands to divorce her, but who says she's going to accept the Kiddushin? So that's outside of his hands, so therefore it's not a good Kiddushin. Tivshot, now let's try to answer Dubaya of Oshaya, that Oshaya asks, Hanosen shtei prutas leisha, that if a fellow gives 2 prutas to a fellow, Ba'achas amarla, with one of the prutas he says, Hiskachli ayom, bim kudeshes me to me today, Uva'achas amarla, Hiskachli la'achas sha'agashech, and then with the second pruta he says, you will be betrothed to me after I subsequently divorce you. Tivshot mina to love Kiddushin. So then we should say that that's not good Kiddushin for the same reason that we said a minute ago, that while it's in his hands to divorce her, it's not in his hands to remarry her, because that's up to her. But Dilma ki echi titavse Kiddushin ashta, tavse nami lacher kain. To which the Gemara says, well, in this particular interesting case, maybe it's not so cut and dry, because maybe perhaps just like he can be Mekadesh her now with the first pruta, maybe he can also be Mekadesh her now for after they get divorced, right? Meaning this isn't right. If they're married and he says, I'm being Mekadesh you after I divorce you, but he can't actually be Mekadesh her right now because they're already married. But in the second case, he's giving her 2 prutas. With the first one, he's being Mekadesh her now, and the second one is being Mekadesh her after they get divorced. So maybe just like he can be Mekadesh her now with the first pruta, maybe the second pruta also works. All right, not super clear what the outcome is. All right. Tana Kavasa de Rabbi Yochanan. So if a Bryce is supporting Rabbi Yochanan, who says that something that is in somebody's hands, it's like it's done. So ein tormin min atalosh ala mechubar. Okay, we cannot separate truma from that which is disconnected for that which is still connected to the ground. Then tarim ein truma so truma. And if he does separate it, it's irrelevant. Ketzad. Now, what does this look like? Omer peris arugazo tlushin. Yu truma peris arugazo mechuberes. If he says that the fruits that are separated from the ground will be truma for the fruits of this row that are still connected, peris arugazo mechuberes. Yu truma peris arugazo tlushin, or fakert, that the fruits of this row that are still connected to the ground will be truma for the fruits of the row that's already been harvested. Lo amar klum, it's completely irrelevant, but if he says once they are, for when the connected ones are already harvested, vinitlishu, and then they got separated, devar kayamin, then it works, because as we see that anything that's in his hands to do, it's not considered mechusar ma'isa, and therefore it works. Now, Yasser al-Kain Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and additionally says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Afilu Amar, even if he says Peris Arugazo Tlushin, that these disconnected fruits, you truma al Peris Arugazo Mechuberes, will be truma for these the fruits of this aruga, that the row that are still connected. Peris Arugazo Mechuberes, you truma al Peris Arugazo Tlushin, or fakert, that the fruits of the connected one will be for the fruits of the disconnected ones. The disconnected fruits. Nichshaviu shlish, once they reach a third of their growth, meaning they aren't yet even a third of the growth yet. Viyitalshu, and then they're separated. Veviu shlish vinitlishu, and then they reached a third and they got separated. Dvar of kayomin. So he throws an extra detail in there, which is not just if they, once they're detached from the ground, but even once they even they still have to grow a little bit more, and that's still okay. Wait for them to grow a little bit more, and then detach them from the ground, and that is still fine. Rabbi, and Rabbi explains, Lo Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov ela b'shachas. So Rabbi explains that, look, when Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that even when they haven't yet reached a third, but they are at a point where they could be used for animal food, at least they're usable for something at that point, and that's why it works. Avo be'agam, lo, but if it was like, I think what it means is like it's in like a swamp, meaning if it's at this stage where it's still like kind of like very weak and can't be used for anything, then it would not work. Rav Yosef Amar afilu ba'agam. And Rav Yosef says, no, even if they are kind of in this very premature state, it would still work if when he says that, once they reach a third and they are disconnected from the ground. My mashma, agam lishna de butzalna, how do I know that agam means that it's like this very young, kind of droopy state? So Amar Belazar says, Belazar the Amar Kra, Belazar halachov ke'agmon rosho. Will you tilt like an agmon, your head? So it's like agam is kind of in this kind of state where it's like still very soft and young and kind of bent. Kiman azla hodetnan. So now, Like whom does our Mishnah go? Ha'omer lachavero im yoda ishtecha nekeva mikudeshes li. That right, Reuven had said to Shimon, as my brother gave a parish, that he said anything. He said lots of things to Shimon, but a very interesting pshat, Ariel. But anyways, Reuven says to Shimon, Im yolda ishtcha nekeva, that Shimon, if your wife gives birth to a daughter, mikudeshes li, so then she will be mikudeshes li, lo amar klum, it's irrelevant. The amar b'chadin, it says b'chadin lo shanu ella she'in ishto meuberes. Well, that's only if his wife is not pregnant. Aval ishto meuberes devar kayam. But if Shimon's wife is pregnant, so then it works, and when the baby's born, she'll be mikudeshes to Reuven. So come on, who's that like? Ik Rabba kshukar ubra. So it could be either according to Rabba, and it has to be when she's already noticeably pregnant, just like when by these fruits, it was when they're already at least shachas, at least could be used for animal food. Ik Rav Yosef avol pishlo ukar ubra. Or you can explain it's according to Rav Yosef, even if the pregnancy is not yet noticeable, just like he says by the fruits, right? Even when it's just an agam. The those who say Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Lo Amar Eliezer ben Yaakov Ela b'shachas devei kivsha. Oh, Rabba says when Eliezer ben Yaakov says that it has to be shachas, usable for animal food, that's talking about when it's growing in a beis habal, in a field that relies upon rainwater, that there's no human intervention necessary. Aval b'shachas devei shakia lo. But if it is if it is in a field that needs human irrigation, so then that would not work, because you could still kind of mess it up. Rav Yosef Amar afilu b'shachas deveshakya, whereas Rav Yosef says no, even if the fruits are at a stage where they could be used for animal food and it's in a field that requires human irrigation, still it would work according to Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov, that just wait for it to reach a third and then disconnect it from the ground. Kaman azla or the Tanan, who does our Mishnah go like? Reuben says to Shimon, if your wife gives birth to a idol, she's mekudeshes to me. Lo amar klum, it's irrelevant. Rab Chanina says, that's only if his wife is not pregnant. But if she is pregnant, then it works. So then, kiman well, then it would be talking about once it's noticeable, because in this way of saying it, both Rabbah and Rav Yosef agree that it has to be shachas. It has to be at least at a point where the fruits could be used as animal food, and here also, like the pregnancy would have to be noticeable. And pregnancy is kind of more similar to a field that is watered by God as opposed to watered by humans, because I guess you just kind of wait for the pregnancy to do its thing and result with a baby. Bisha Tova. Amar Abai, says Abai, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov v'Rebbi Meir. Wait, what? No, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov v'Rebbi v'Reb Meir kulu svirlu or the makne davish lo balolim. So says Abai that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Rebbe and Reb Meir all hold that or the makne davish lo balolim. A person could be makne, a kinyan be made on a dover, can make a kinyan, I guess, on a dover shelo balolim. Something that does not yet exist. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Hada Amar. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that which we saw, that you can separate truma already from something that has not yet reached a third. You could already be separating. You can already say that I'm going to separate truma, and then once you, even though it's not yet a third. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay, fine. Hada Amar. Rebbe Ditanya. Lo saskir eved el adonov, says Rashi, as her the bezdin shli eskiru levaylav l'shtabedlo, that the bezdin cannot give an eved back to his adon to continue being an eved. Rabbi Omer says, Rabbi bilokeach eved almanas l'shacharo hakosum bedaber. That Rabbi says it's talking about when a fellow purchases an eved in order to free him, under the condition that he will immediately be freed. Hey chidam, how is this? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak kigon, for example, the kosav lei, that he writes in the document that when I am kona you, you belong to yourself, you are free me'achshav from now. So we see that he's making a kin, he's writing a document for something that, right, and he's saying that you are going to be kona yourself, even though he's still an eved at the point that it's being written, but he's saying that once you will be freed, you will then belong to yourself. And Reb Meir Finally, Remer the Tanya we learn in the Brisa Omer Leisha that a fellow says to a fellow, "Mikudeshesli lachash es gayer." You're mikudeshes to me after I convert. Lachash es gayer after you convert. Lachash es tachrer after I'm freed. Lachash es tachrer after you're freed. Lachash yomus bailech after your husband dies. Lachash tamus achosech after your sister dies. Lachash yachlutz l'chayivamech after your yavam does chalitza with you. Einu mikudeshes. In none of these cases is a good kiddushin. Einu mikudeshes. Remeir Omer mikudeshes. Remeir says it is good kiddushin because you can be makne adavar shaloba leolam. Rabbi Yochanan Sandler Omer Einu mikudeshes. Says Rabbi Yochanan Sandler it's not good kiddushin. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi Omer mikudeshes. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi says that it would be good kiddushin. Umatam Amu Einu mikudeshes mishum eva. But specifically when it comes to harei mikudeshes when your husband dies or when your sister dies, in that case it doesn't work only because that's not very nice. Your husband and your sister would not really appreciate hearing that. But in theory, though, it would work. So v'nachshav naim Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. So why don't we also add Rabbi Yehuda Anasi to the list of people who say they could be makne davar shelo ba la'olam? Hainu Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. But we already have Rabbi on the list, and Rabbi is Rabbi Yehuda Anasi and Rabbi are the same thing, same person. V'nachshav nami Rabbi Akiva. Why don't we also include Rabbi Akiva? The Tanan konam shani osa leficha ein tzarich lohafer. That if a wife says that any stuff that I make is also to you, so Rabbi Akiva, so we say the husband doesn't need to be made for that because because her ma'aseh yadayim belong to him. It's not. She can't just say that you can't have it. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer says Rabbi Akiva that he is made for the neder. Shema taidif olav. Well, if she makes more than what she has to give him, well, then it would kick in. And she's saying, well, the extra stuff you can't have. So he should be mefer. So we see it's davar shelo ba la'olam. So itmar Allah, Amar Puna Breda of Yeshua be'omeres, yikadru yadai, lo seim v'yadai misnu ba'olam. Well, it says in Puna Breda of Yeshua, it's talking about when she says that my hands will be mikudashos to their maker. And that's what it means in her hands currently exist. I mean, she's saying any of the things that I make, anything that produced by my hands, right? You cut your yada. My hands are being made off limits to God, and right for God. And her hands currently exist, so it's not a davar shelo ba la'olam. Friends, now is the Samach Beis Masechta Kiddushin. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.